No, I didn't know. I carried my camera with me, and there was a period in my life when I was filming all the time, everything. And we went to Paraguay to adopt my daughter, and I took my camera along and I filmed, and I didn't know whether it would be a part of a film, a longer film, or whether it would be its own film. I didn't know what it would be used for. But I shot. I filmed, a small percentage of the time, but a little bit every other day, 20 minutes, something like that. Then I came home and didn't do anything for many years with that material. Then I started working on all of the footage, 10 years worth of footage of my family, and the Paraguay footage was part of that scene, part of the material. And the more I worked on it, the more I realized it could possibly become its own film. And I shaped it into a documentary, and I think the documentary is pretty good, but my wife and I have decided we are not going to release it for another year. It showed in Venice, at the Venice Film Festival, and I think it's, she wants to keep it down for a while until our daughter gets older, and that's what we're going to do. I don't always know for sure that I have my subject, to answer your question. And often I film things, moments, just for the sake of filming them because what's happening at that moment is interesting to me. And then later on I discover this will be good for whatever film I'm working on. In Bright Leaves, which is a very recent film of mine, there are shots and scenes that I filmed 12 years before. And when I filmed those scenes, I didn't even know what they would be used for, but they ended up being in Bright Leaves. So sometimes it works like that things I filmed a long time ago come back into the film and animate it in some way. So, and as far as knowing when the basic subject of my film, how to begin a film, I usually do decide at some point to begin a new film, but then I have no idea where it's going. I don't have a script. I don't do pre-production research. I don't prepare myself. I don't do pre-interviews with my subjects. I just start filming, and then one thing leads to another, and eventually a film, although I get enough material for a film. It's very difficult, and usually I have an assistant who works with me to help me do the editing, and I rely on that person's opinion quite a bit. Objectivity is one of the most difficult things to achieve in an autobiographical documentary, definitely. And also I do many test screenings for my friends where I show the work in progress and get their comments and their suggestions. And yes, it's very hard to have objectivity because the film is about your own life. Oh, I think people relax a little bit. If there's not a lot of equipment and a big crew, I think you can achieve a kind of intimacy and spontaneity too that would not be possible otherwise. Yes, well, for me, I think I've devoted my professional filmmaking life to simplifying the act of filmmaking as much as possible. And by that I mean trying to master as much of the technology as you can yourself so that you don't have to have a big crew, so that you can in fact make a film for a small amount of money with a small number of people and possibly achieve a kind of intimacy that would not be possible otherwise. But I think it's fine to make films with big crews, of documentaries even, with big crews of 5 or 10 people, maybe 15. But for me, I prefer just doing it as one person, like a photojournalist. And I think, now that we have digital technology, it's much easier to do that. I made my early films with 16 millimeter, but even then, I was doing it all, by myself. So I've always believed that there are ways to make films in a more simple form that actually can achieve things that a larger film cannot achieve. Sometimes I will make notes at the time that I'm shooting, and I'll put the note in my pocket or write it into a little notebook, and then months later when I start to do the editing, I take out my notes and I start to write narration. And oftentimes I will write things that I didn't think about when I was shooting, but sometimes those notes help me to remember how I was thinking at that moment when I was shooting. And it's a combination of the two. I would say most of it is created long after the act of shooting, and but occasionally there's a little memento from the time that I'm shooting that becomes incorporated into the text of the voiceover. The voiceover goes through many, many generations, many editions. For me, it's very, very hard to get it the way I like it. I don't know why, because when I look at the transcripts, it seems very simple. There's nothing complicated about or poetical about what I write. It just takes me a very long time to get the voiceover right. And then, of course, I have to not only write it, I have to perform it, and that takes many different editions as well. So for me, voiceover is very, very hard. I mean, you're some kind of a journalist, I presume, and you know, for me, it was very hard. Writing was always very, very difficult. I used to write before I made films. I don't know. I don't know which critics they were. I feel that I was very affectionate towards the Paraguayan people. That sometimes I felt the bureaucracy was very, very slow in working against us, and you know, maybe there I was a little critical of the bureaucracy, the government bureaucracy. The court system was very, very slow. But I don't think I'm condescending at all. I don't. I just think it's not true. It's my feeling anyway. But I'm also critical of the United States too. In the film, I talk about how the U.S. government supported tacitly a lot of what was going on during the dictatorship. So I'm critical of the United States. I'm critical of Paraguay. I'm critical of everybody, all the governments in the film. And when I was there, it was after Stroessner, but it was still unstable, and it was a little strange because the dictatorship had been there for so long, so many years, 35 years, that I think in a way Paraguay was still adjusting. And but now I think the future is probably brighter than it was when I was there. Well, I thought the people in everyday life that I met were so kind and so relaxed that for me it was a wonderful experience to be with them. One of the most pleasurable moments I have is filming a seamstress, you know, working at a sewing machine. And seamstress, yes, you know, with a sewing machine. And she allowed my son, who was 6 years old at the time, to operate the sewing machine, and it was just a wonderful afternoon that we spent with them filming. And she, for me, embodied so much of what I enjoyed about being with the Paraguayan people, the kind of cheerfulness, and it's a cheerfulness with resignation, so it has a sad side to it, at least at that time. They were poor, but her determination not to be resentful to a gringo like me, you know, from the United States, and she welcomed me in, and I just felt I felt that happening over and over and over again, that spirit of welcoming was there in Paraguay, and it was something that I really cherished, you know, it's good, so.